Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. When we talk about PSEA, protection from sexual exploitation and abuse, we are talking about real lives, vulnerable communities. It's the absolute baseline of humanitarian trust, right? But look, there's a massive, often unspoken problem in this space. Having a beautifully written policy document sitting on a shelf in a headquarters somewhere does not protect anyone. It doesn't fund a hotline, it doesn't fuel a vehicle for field verification. If there aren't actual, dedicated resources driving that policy on the ground, it's just an empty promise. So today, we're going to transform PSEA from a theoretical compliance checklist into concrete, fully funded leadership action.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're moving deliberately from high-level policies straight down into granular practice. We'll look at the real cost of protection, test our ideas with diverse voices, and tackle that incredibly frustrating unfunded mandate scenario. Then, we'll learn to spot weak signals and wrap up with a strict 72-hour action plan. Let's get into it. Kicking things off with Section 1, from policy to practice. We really need to bridge that dangerous gap between what's written in a fancy high-level document and what actually happens out there on the ground. Because there's a stark contrast between saying something is important and actually proving it. Verbal commitments, speeches, declarations, they're great for setting the tone. You absolutely need that initial leadership voice. But your personnel and your partners, they notice when that loud voice is followed by total silence regarding the budget. They notice if leaders are actually asking for proof or just assuming it's all fine. We need observable actions. That means authorizing dedicated funding, relentless follow-up, and ensuring reporting channels actually work for the most vulnerable people in the community.
And that brings us to Action Area 6, Generate and Allocate Resources. Basically, it's a practical leadership discipline. It's all about mobilizing dedicated funding, cost-sharing, and mainstreaming costs so PSEA goes from just being awareness to a visible daily routine. Look, resource allocation isn't exactly a sexy new initiative, is it? It's gritty, everyday management. It's not just something you hand off to the finance department and forget about. You have to mainstream these costs so that protection becomes an unavoidable, non-negotiable part of every single program design.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 2, the real cost of protection.
We have to confront the reality that protecting people actually costs money, time, and specific resources. But resource mobilization isn't just about hunting down one massive, elusive budget line. It's a whole toolkit. Yes, we for sure need dedicated funding for coordinators, but it's also about cost sharing among multiple agencies, pooling resources so no one is carrying the whole financial burden alone. It's active donor advocacy. And don't forget in-kind contributions. Think about an operations manager who might not have raw cash to give, but can definitely allocate 2 vehicles every month for field verification or book secure meeting rooms for highly confidential survivor interviews.
Now, as we build out these resource plans, there's a fundamental truth we've got to internalize. Diverse communities do not experience risk in the same way. Field conditions like insecurity, geographic isolation, or even just weak connectivity affect everyone completely differently. A reporting app on a smartphone? That is literally useless to a community without internet access or reliable electricity. Crucially, these harsh realities don't reduce our obligation to protect people. They just mean we have to prioritize better and fund simpler, more robust methods.
Because of those vastly different experiences, we hit Section 3, testing with diverse voices. We need to actively pressure test our plans using the exact perspectives of the diverse people actually navigating them. Think about it like a cast of characters. You've got Ibrahim, a senior leader. How does his authority, location, and institutional fears shape his PSEA experience? Then there's Helen, the donor liaison. She can't just ask for money, she urgently needs a clear investment case. What about Yara, the budget analyst? Does she actually have the info she needs to map out these costs, or is she just guessing? And remember Patrick, our operations manager. He has the capacity to offer in-kind support, like those vehicles, which totally bypasses lengthy budget cycles. Aisha is focused on survivor assistance costs, and Mateo is looking at cost sharing. If your plan doesn't account for these vastly different roles and constraints, it's going to fail in the field.
So whenever you review a resource plan, hit the pause button. Ask yourself these 2 absolutely crucial questions. Who currently lacks access to this system, and what information must remain strictly confidential? It's so tempting to just jump to a quick financial fix, but a strong leader stops and asks how to fund access for those who are left out. And the stakes for confidentiality? Off the charts. If confidentiality is breached because of a poorly funded system, trust shatters instantly. You absolutely must budget for secure data handling and private spaces.
All right, let's move to Section 4, the unfunded mandate scenario. Let's put everything we've talked about into practice, with the dilemma I'm sure you know all too well. Imagine this scenario. Your team designs a beautiful, comprehensive PSCE plan. Strong activities, robust outreach, but a budget of exactly zero. So what happens? Essential training gets postponed indefinitely. Translation is unfunded, so the community literally doesn't understand their rights. The referral pathway is totally stalled. Total operational paralysis. This is the exact moment passive management fails and active leadership has to step in.
So how do we break the paralysis? First, make a convincing, data-driven investment case to donors and internal budget holders. Show them funding PSEA isn't some luxury administrative overhead. It is a core risk management necessity. Second, sit down with partners and determine joint funding versus in-kind contributions. What can be shared? And third, monitor those resources aggressively. Simply throwing money at a problem doesn't guarantee success. You have to actively track if those newly allocated resources are actually producing safer systems on the ground.
Which brings us to Section 5, recognizing weak signals.
Look, a system rarely just fails out of nowhere. There are almost always warning signs. Strong leaders train themselves to spot these weak signals early. Say you hear an informal joke about complaints, or a crucial meeting keeps getting delayed. The discipline here is to separate facts from assumptions and avoid immediate blame. Your response? Record the issue, consult your focal point privately, and protect confidentiality. What if you spot an unclear clause in a partner agreement? Identify what policy or support is missing and agree on a safe next step. Or what if a budget line gets quietly removed without discussion? You need to observe that environment carefully, ask exactly whose voice is now going to be silenced, and follow up relentlessly to restore it.
To truly know if your system is working, you need hard evidence. And I don't mean pointing to a one-time speech. I mean looking hard at the data. Are training completion rates hitting 100%, or are they stalled at 40%? Look at partner capacity assessments and actually functioning reporting channels. Are the referral pathways updated? Dive into that budget execution data to ensure the money was spent on protection. Even check the meeting minutes to verify leadership is making actionable decisions. Just remember, as you gather all this oversight data, you must never, ever expose victims or witnesses.
Finally, let's pull the whole shebang together in Section 6, your next 72 hours. Concepts are great, but they mean nothing without immediate, observable action. Here is your timeline to get moving. Within the next 72 hours, identify a quick win. Momentum is critical. Seriously, just get PSEA added to the agenda for your next senior management meeting so it cannot be ignored. Over the next 2 weeks, complete an immediate update. Maybe rewrite a vague corporate message into clear, plain language so the community actually knows their reporting options. Then, set your sights on the next quarter. Use that time to tackle the heavy, structural fixes, like securing complex senior endorsements or formal multi-agency agreements.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. How will you know whether your action actually reduced risk rather than simply creating another document to sit on a dusty shelf? Because at the end of the day, the strongest evidence of your leadership isn't your ability to memorize terms from a framework. It's your ability to recognize real-world risk, ruthlessly allocate the right resources, and strengthen your systems long before a crisis forces your hand. Take that question back to your teams, forensically review your budgets, and make it happen. Thanks for joining me for this explainer today.